Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champions? It is Tuesday, June 9th. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as normal, per usual, alwaysness.
What's up?
Still separated by internet connection.
Yep.
We got a lot to get to in this episode, per usual. We got news on our Tuesday episodes, as always. And we have wide receiver sleepers, so we're continuing the sleeper series on this episode, and we're bringing you wide receivers. Before we jump into the information of the news, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at thefantasychampions. Like us at facebook.com/thefantasychampions. Subscribe wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Be sure to click the bell on YouTube and leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching there. Leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. As a quick reminder before we hop into the news, the draft guide is currently active. It is live. Well, not yet. July 1st is when it's live, but pre-orders are live at $25 a piece. It has full rankings, breakouts, busts, sleepers, player draft values, exclusive articles, player breakdowns, whatever you want. We have it in there, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Be sure to purchase soon before the price goes up in July. And if you pre-order now, you will be entered in for a chance to be in our listener league at random draw. So be sure to tell your friends. You can try to beat the crap out of us in fantasy football.
Yeah.
And put us to the test. So be sure to purchase $25 now and tell your friends.
Yeah. Definitely. Let's do it.
Let's get to the news. Titans OC Arthur Smith said Derrick Henry. We got some Derrick Henry news. Derrick Henry's workload for the upcoming season depends on how games go. Well, I'll be darned. I had no idea, because that's exactly what happened last year.
Yeah, that's not really news, honestly.
Yeah, that's kind of the drawback of Derrick Henry, and it always will be, is just how, like, if the Titans are effective offensively, of course Derrick Henry is going to be a part of the game plan in that context.
25 plus carries. Yeah,
but if it's a game where they're getting their faces blown off, it's probably going to be a bad game for Derrick Henry. So that's, he's not matchup dependent, but he's as close as it's going to get. So you know what you're getting in Derrick Henry. I think the first round price tag's a little too high, but that's just me.
Okay. All right.
Bruce Arians was asked if he was willing to sign Devonta Freeman. He said if the price tag was reasonable, so it sounds like he's interested. That would destroy all of the Rojo and Keyshawn Vaughn shares. So I think Freeman would probably take over the starting role and do pretty freaking well with it.
He'd at least split, I think, with Ronald Jones.
Yeah, and Keyshawn Vaughn would he'd be nowhere to be found.
He'd get some touches, but wouldn't be fantasy relevant.
Right. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. Broncos quarterback Drew Locke has been throwing daily with first-round pick Jerry Jeudy in Denver. That's good news. Good news for Jerry Jeudy, I guess. I'm sitting here thinking, like, last year we had Mr. McLaurin, Terry McLaurin, end up being a what was he, wide receiver 19? Wide receiver 18? Can't remember.
I believe somewhere in that range.
But he was a low-end wide receiver, too. And it was a surprising low-end wide receiver, too. And so you go into this year and you think, who's going to be that wide receiver? That, like, everyone expects CeeDee Lamb to be the guy, to be the wide receiver 2 in this rookie draft class. Because there's not going to be a wide receiver 1. You can quote me on that.
But that's not going to happen.
So could it be Jerry Jeudy in Denver if Drew Locke ends up performing better this year than he did last year, and takes, logical steps forward?
Yeah. I think it could. It's possible. He has to take that big step forward, though, that year 2 jump.
Right.
But yeah, no, if he does, it's definitely possible. My only concern is just, even if he does, like, Cortland Sutton's there.
Yeah.
No Font's there. So Jerry Jeudy would have to do a lot to get in that spot.
Yep.
But it is possible. He's got the talent for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a guy to keep an eye on, but I don't know if he's getting drafted right now. But if he's not, he's probably going to be a waiver wire ad a couple weeks into the season. We'll have to see what happens. ESPN's Adam Schefter, he's reporting that Todd Gurley passed his physical on Monday. Because of COVID, he wasn't able to take his team physical, so he finally took it, and his contract with the Falcons is officially official. So he will be playing for the Falcons. Not that that is any important news, but just so you know, he's not going to be a Falcon. Matt Ryan has been talking up the Falcons' new tight end, Hayden Hurst, in a Tuesday Zoom session. And the question is, for me, I've seen a lot of excitement for Hayden Hurst in the fantasy football community and world. Many of the accounts that I follow have been speaking of him, and I haven't really thought of him as a possible breakout option, just knowing how many targets are in that Falcons offense and how, I guess, random it was last year. I guess it wasn't random, but how random it was for Austin Hooper to get as many targets as he did. Like, if Austin Hooper was still a Falcon, I would have tagged him for massive regression. So for me, I don't know that Hayden Hurst is going to walk into Atlanta and start lighting up defenses.
Yeah, I mean, so if you assume that Matt Ryan's going to view Hayden Hurst like he did Austin Hooper last year and give him the same amount of targets, then yeah, Hayden Hurst.
Of course, he's going to be good
on everybody's breakout. But like you said, it's a matter of just them. Are they going to focus on the tight end position like they did in the past?
Probably not.
And by past, I mean last year, because in the past, minus last year, Hooper never had that many targets.
He was always a low end tight end one.
Yeah, he was involved, but he wasn't as good as he was.
Yeah, he wasn't a week to week guy.
I mean, he like Hayden Hurst, I think, is a decent option.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like quite on the train like some people are.
Yeah. I think every tight end, I saw a tweet earlier today. It said, in the offseason, every tight end is athletic.
Yeah, it's true.
I think every tight end is hyped up in the offseason. So for me, I go by that same system of how far down are they on the target sheet, and I would say he's 4, and that's not a good look for a tight end. So draft him at risk. I mean, if he's a 15th round draft selection or completely undrafted, you pick him up off the waiver wire, go ahead. I don't care, but I think that's totally fine. But I think if you're drafting him, you know, where you were drafting Hooper last year, you're kind of, well, was Hooper a 14th round pick? So I guess that's not bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's other guys out there that I'd be more excited about. And then the final piece of news that I put last for specific reason, it's probably the most important news. Dalvin Cook randomly came out yesterday and said that he will not participate in any team activities until he receives a contract. He wants money, of course, everyone, but I sent it in our group chat for our league. I said, Dalvin Cook, you know, trying to hold out, you know, right now. And everyone was like, well, why? Because he wants money. What do you think? People don't just hold out for their sake of their life. Hold out for money. So the reports are that he would gladly take $13 million per year, which is doable. Still a lot.
Yeah.
But it's doable. This is a little early for Dalvin Cook, too. He's still got like 2 years on his contract.
Right, yeah.
He's getting out ahead of it.
It's not football season unless a running back holds out.
I know.
Unfortunately.
Now, there's two, levels to the scenario. We had our writer, Adam Hutchison, who had an article go out this morning where he talked about at the end of the article as a bonus, Mike Boone being a pickup. You have Alexander Madison, who would be my assumption to take over what Dalvin Cook did if he misses time. I don't think he's going to miss time. This is going to be similar to Zeke. I do, however, think that the Vikings probably could move without Dalvin to the start of the season. But anyway,
they could.
So Dalvin holds out. What's his value? Misses 4 games.
He misses 4 games. I think it's probably third round.
Okay, second, third round.
I'd probably say around third round. It's a little higher than what Melvin Gordon was last year.
Now, what do you want with Madison?
In a redraft, I'm not going completely out of my way for him because if assuming Cook comes back in 4 weeks,
Yeah.
you're only going to get 4. It's like Austin Eckler last year.
Mm-hmm.
Although Eckler was still good even when Melvin Gordon came back, but he wasn't the same player he was without Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
I think it would be the same thing. You're only going to get 4 real good weeks out of him, but he is worth he's probably worth like a 7th rounder.
Yeah, and I think Mike Boone is probably a deeper play. If, obviously Dalvin Cook holds out and Madison comes on the field, then, you have the backup in Mike Boone, but he only comes in when a scenario presents itself that he's hurt, especially in redraft. So don't be drafting Mike Boone. But I would say Dalvin Cook in the 3rd round. Yes, please. If that were to happen, I would totally be on board with that. I don't think that's going to end up happening. It will hit his value a little bit. So I think he'll end up being a 2nd round pick. But last year, Zeke ended up being a top 5 pick anyway. So
yeah, he was.
I mean, Dalvin Cook might just be that guy, but I don't know. I mean, there is no team activities right now.
Right.
OTAs are canceled. There's just
it's just like
training camp in
parks.
Training camp in the middle of July. Excuse me. Training camp in the middle of July, and then obviously preseason in August. So it's like if those 2 things happen on time, then Dalvin Cook would assumedly not report to those. But at this point, with the weirdness of COVID-19, I'm not sure that Dalvin Cook should. What is he holding out at this point?
Yeah,
if it's not games. Anything. But anyway, so that's the Dalvin Cook news. Keep an eye on that situation. Let's move into our wide receiver sleepers for the 2020 season. This was a fun series to do last year. There was a lot of guys on the list that we hit, and there was a lot of guys on the list that we didn't hit. This is one of those wide receivers. There's a lot of wide receivers, mid rounds, late rounds. We had a tough time with the. We wanted to put some guys in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round on this list, but they're not sleepers. They're breakouts. So,
right.
So a lot of guys on this list are in between the rounds of 9 and 15. They're not deep. Some of them are I guess they're not deep sleepers. I wouldn't say they're deep sleepers.
No,
yet.
but they're guys that you're not drafting in the first 9 rounds, probably. Maybe 9th
right.
for one of these guys. But
for
the most part, it's like 10th to 15th round guys.
They're guys that could jump into the wide receiver 2, maybe high-end wide receiver 2 conversation. I'm not sure. Some of these guys I said could have a wide receiver 1 season, but it would be difficult for them to do it. So let's start with the first guy on the list, Deante Johnson. Now, he's a little bit he's an interesting play because he had some really good games last year and he had some really bad games last year. But in the back half of the season, in the last 4 games of the season, he was the wide receiver 11, the wide receiver 46, 8, and then 41. So he wasn't getting, in what he did last year with a terrible quarterback was astounding. 92 targets, 59 receptions. I mean, he was encroaching Juju on the target totals. So, you saw some interesting stuff happen. 680 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was averaging roughly 5.8 targets a game. So I think the reason why, I would say Deante Johnson is a sleeper is because obviously he's a guy that is not expected. He was a 3rd round pick. He's not expected to be a breakout year 2 wide receiver who ends up being a wide receiver 1. But I think he's one of those guys that can get the middle range wide receiver 2. I think Juju's probably going to be the bigger and better wide receiver, obviously, this year with the most targets. But you saw in this offense when they had Brown and they had Juju Smith-Schuster that Juju was able to get 160 plus targets and Odell was able to get 160 plus targets with Big Ben throwing the football. So, I mean, obviously, I don't think they're going to throw it 650 times like they did the season that happened. But if Big Ben throws it 550 to 575 times, I could totally see Juju getting 150 targets and Deante Johnson getting around 110 to 120, which would safely put him in that, middle to high end wide receiver 2 conversation. Plus, he's a long threat wide receiver similar to Antonio Brown. So I think with his youth, his athleticism, and his ability to, catch the football, I think he could definitely be a great snag. His ADP right now is 126, so 13th round. So he's a guy that you can get super late, who's probably going to be the wide receiver 2 on the Steelers, and is most likely going to get 100 to 110 more targets.
Right. No, I mean, I've done a draft or two mock drafts where he went undrafted completely.
Wow.
I think he's
was that on Sleeper?
Slept on. Yeah. You said he could get 110, 120 targets. I think that's very possible. If he can get 110 targets to 120, if he gets 120 targets, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility, by the way. The Steelers throw the ball a lot when Ben Roethlisberger actually plays. There's a lot of targets to go around. And other than Juju, he's the clear number 2 guy. They drafted Chase Claypool, but he's not going to really, I don't think,
at least year one.
Involved. Year one,
he's
right?
probably going to be more in the slot next to Juju or at tight end is what my expectation would be with Chase Claypool. But year one for him, I don't expect. He'll probably hit 50 to 75 targets, but I don't see him getting past 75. That's the high end, really high end, really. I
think he's probably going to be somewhere in the 40s, to be honest.
Oh wow, okay.
And for his rookie season.
Yeah, I think he's talented. I just don't see.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think he's somebody who will be good long term,
at least for this year.
Yeah, but other than Juju, Deante Johnson is the guy there for wide receivers, and like you were saying, he's kind of a big play guy. Yeah. So if you give him if you give him 110, 120 targets, he's going to be a low end wide receiver too, at least.
Yeah.
And if Juju gets hurt again, he becomes the number 1 wide receiver, and you know how Big Ben is. He targets those number 1 guys. I mean, even number 2 guys when he had Antonio Brown and Juju. So I really love Deante Johnson. He's somebody who, if you're taking at the end of the draft, he's, not a high risk player. He's a high reward player. So it's the perfect guy to take at the end of the draft. He's young. He's in the breakout age for wide receivers. And if you can get him in the 14th round.
Yeah.
Or 13th round, like you said, where he was going, he went undrafted in a few drafts. So you can get him in the bottom 3 rounds. I think that's a steal, honestly.
So just to give you a little bit of perspective on him, he was he had the number 1 target separation in all of fantasy, in all of football. I'm sorry. Which essentially is a receiver's average yards of separation distance from the closest defensive back at the moment the pass target arrives, which was 2.39 yards. So he's what it looks like and sounds like he's very good route runner. And so I think he only had 3 drops last year on his 92 targets. So I'm thinking that he's going to have, if he's as good a route runner as he showed last year, I think he's going to have some really great games, especially with Big Ben. Now, the biggest thing that I'm looking at is fantasy point per target. In PPR, he could hit 200 fantasy points if he gets 120 targets, because he had a fantasy point per target of 1.71, which is, like I said, high-end wide receiver 2. So for me, or a mid-range wide receiver 2, I'm sorry. But I think there's a possibility that this guy could, especially in the 13th round, be a very surprising player. Now, we could also see, Chase Claypool come in and eat into Deante Johnson's targets. Yes. But when you're talking about drafting a guy in the 13th round at wide receiver who could possibly have 110, 115 targets, you're not really thinking about risk. You know what I mean? I'll take that all day. If there's a chance he gets 115 to 120 targets, I'll take it.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, you're taking him in the 13th, 14th round. It's not a guarantee that Deante Johnson's going to have that type of season.
Right.
Obviously, Chase Claypool could do something. James Washington could do something. But if you're taking somebody this late in the draft and he has the potential to get 110, 120 targets, you got to take him.
Yeah. Let's talk about the next guy. He's a little bit on the older side. ADP of 115, 12th round. He is definitely on the older side. Alshon Jeffrey, who in the first part of the season, the first 4 or 5 weeks, he was I think he was a wide receiver 2, low end, and he had some really great wide receiver 1 weeks. He's always had kind of a connection problem with Carson Wentz, but he's the bona fide wide receiver 1 on the Philadelphia Eagles, and Carson Wentz is still their quarterback. They have a good running back in Miles Sanders. Their offensive line is good. Like, there's no reason, if Alshon Jeffrey is healthy, that he can't produce in the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And to get that in the 12th round, I think it's a fantastic value for your bench. He had last year 72 targets through 9 games, which is around 8 targets a game when he was on the field. He only had, I think it was a 1.70 fantasy point per target. So if you pace him out at that 8 target per game total throughout the whole season, he'll hit 130 targets, which basically with that 1.7 fantasy points per target is 215 fantasy points as a wide receiver 1. Yes, the rookie wide receiver they draft is going to come in and he's going to take some target share. But I really do believe that you're going to see him hit. I don't think he'll hit 130 targets. I think you could safely say 110. But I think the efficiency is there. I think he's a good enough player, and he's the wide receiver 1 for the Eagles. So if he's on the field for the whole season, which is the big question, I think he's a great value past round 10.
It's the Walmart slogan, great value. I think. Yeah. I mean, I agree though with Alshon.
Are you saying you're going to purchase Alshon Jeffrey at Walmart?
Yeah, I don't know if he's probably my first buy.
What are those little bobblehead dolls that they have?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
I don't remember what they're called.
But
I'm sure there's an Alshon Jeffrey one in Philadelphia, though.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah, probably. I mean, with the wide receivers that they've had, he's probably the top of the list. But the thing with Alshon Jeffrey's health, but if he does stay healthy, I love Jalen Reagor. He's probably one of my favorite rookie wide receivers, fantasy wise. But he's still a rookie. I think if both guys are healthy, Alshon Jeffrey's going to get the majority of the targets, and he's going to be the number 1 receiver in the offense. Desean Jackson's still going to get some work, but is Desean Jackson healthy at all? Is it right? I mean, he's like 100 years old at this point.
Yeah, I forgot about Jackson.
Yeah, but I remember last year how he was only supposed to miss like 2 weeks, and then he missed like 13.
Yeah.
So health is a big concern for Jackson, as well as it is for Jeffrey. But Jeffrey is younger than Desean Jackson, so I kind of look at it like that. And when both guys are healthy, Jeffrey still gets the majority of the targets. Right. Like you said, I think he had like 72 targets last year, 73 targets. And you said 9 games played? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if he plays 16 games, I think it's safe to...
hold on a second. I'm sorry. He wasn't 4th on the team. He was 3rd on the team in targets, and he only played 9 games.
Yeah, I think if he plays a full 16, it's safe to assume he's going to get around 110 targets. Yeah. And if he does that, if you can get somebody who's going to get 110 targets in the 12th round, that's as you said, great value.
And I think the other thing is too is I just looked up the Eagles team stats, and they have 607 pass attempts for Carson Wentz last year. That's probably because they were trash most of the time playing from behind. But if they throw another 600 passes, it is very reasonable that he could hit 120.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think
I haven't projected the Eagles yet, but
I think I have him at like 600 pass attempts exact, or around 600. So I think that's going to happen. And if he does, Jeffries should. I mean, you should draft Alshon Jeffrey.
Would you agree that he's the wide receiver 1 on the Eagles?
On the Eagles?
He's their number 1 wide receiver.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know why, if he stays healthy, I don't see why he should be a 12th round pick. Should put like a 7th, 8th round pick. But so that's why I'm like, sleeper, I would snag him, steal him. Some of these guys are like, they're not sexy. They're not like, oh my God, I love them.
This is the least sexy one.
Deante, it's true. Deante Johnson, Cole Hardman, some other guys on the list, sexy. But Alshon Jeffrey, not that. So let's talk about that other guy I just mentioned, Cole Hardman. His ADP is 113, same round as Alshon, going a little bit sooner. Cole Hardman had some monster performances last year. Yep. with only like 3 catches. He's ridiculous. I think the max amount of receptions he had last year in a game was 4. That was without Tyreek Hill in the game.
Yep.
Because Tyreek Hill missed 7 weeks, 8 weeks. I can't remember.
He missed. I don't know if he missed that many. He missed
quite a few.
A couple games.
Yeah.
Though. Yeah.
But anyway, so I mean, this is a little bit of a deeper play. And I don't want to say it's a deeper play because I really do believe at the end of the day, when the season starts and the lights turn on for the Kansas City Chiefs and they drop their first championship banner, make me want to throw up a little bit. But Cole Hardman's going to be the wide receiver too on the team. So that begs the question of how often do you think he's going to get targeted? And they still have Watkins. Am I right? They still got Sammy Watkins.
Do. Yes.
I'm curious to see. I think he's going to do similar things to Sammy Watkins, but stay healthy. He's very similar to Tyreek Hill. Very similar to Tyreek Hill in a lot of ways.
Fits the offense perfectly.
Yeah, he fits the offense perfectly. He had 6 touchdowns last year, 538 yards. The biggest problem I have, two targets a game, 41 targets overall on the season, 26 receptions on the season, which is 1 reception a game. But the 1 reception was a touchdown a majority of the time, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what the average touchdown rate for a wide receiver 1 or 2 is in the NFL?
What is it?
It's around 4 or 5, maybe 6%. 6% is usually really good. Cole Hardman was at 23.1%.
That's insane. That's going to go down.
He caught a touchdown on 23% of his catches. That's freaking insane.
If he gets like 70 targets this year, all he needs is 70 targets. That's all he needs.
It's scary. His catch rate on 70 targets, it was catchable target rate was 75. His quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. His true catch rate was 83%. His quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. He had the number 1 yards per reception last year, and his quarterback is Patrick Mahomes.
He had almost 21 yards per reception.
He was an efficiency beast. It's crazy. That's going to all go down. Trust me. All of these numbers are going to go down.
But by how much? Because it's Patrick Mahomes. And
if he catches 83% and he gets 70 targets, I mean, he's going to catch 60 balls.
Yeah.
Which is, 3 a game? I mean, that's scary, but I don't know. My big thing is you don't know if the opportunity, the efficiency's there, but you don't know if the opportunity is going to be there, because if he does regress a little bit, which is expected, he's not going to catch 23% touchdown rate. But if he does increase his target share to 80, 90, maybe 100 targets, I think he's very much worthy of some startable games and to be on your bench. But it's hard to draft a guy that's only going to get 50 targets next year, or maybe even 70 targets to your situation, and be comfortable starting him for 1 game unless Reek Hill misses some time. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, I've been talking about fantasy point per target and PPR, 2.77, number 1 in the NFL. So, I mean, he was by far the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL last year when he had his opportunities. If he gets the target share, all the power to people to get Cole Hardman, and it's worth the risk. It's in the 12th round. It's worth the risk.
Absolutely worth the risk. That's the biggest thing is again, when you're drafting this late, you're kind of just looking for those sleepers or those breakout guys. Yeah. And Cole Hardman fits the bill perfectly for that. Yeah. Again, I think
number 3 in target separation too. We're talking about Deante Johnson. He was right there with him.
He fits the bill perfectly for the Chiefs offense. He's going to be a big play machine. Yeah. He might have a game where he gets 2 catches, but he'll still get you 2 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown.
That was the biggest dilemma that you had last year, is that, you were like, do you play this guy, right? In a situation where, you didn't have Tyreek Hill. He wasn't getting, I'm sorry, I misquoted myself. The max amount of targets he had last year in 1 game was 6. The max amount of catches he had in 1 game last year was 4 receptions. So, yeah. Anyway, but I think when you look at, him as a whole, I think his opportunity is going to increase. Obviously, I mean, Sammy Watkins is still there, but rumors have been flying that Mr. Watkins is going to be either cut or traded, or they don't want him on the team anymore. But last year he had 90 targets, 52 receptions in 13 games. That paced out at about 4 receptions a game. I think you could see that from Cole Hardman this year with a possible increase. So, I mean, his efficiency is there.
He was a rookie last year too. People forget.
I know it's
that year too. He's that efficient as a rookie.
This might be my favorite sleeper, with Deante Johnson being my second. You got guys like Alshon Jeffrey on this list who probably are safer bets. Hardman's probably the biggest risk, but when you're talking about if he was an 8th round pick, I would be nervous.
Then you're kind of exactly.
You're taking a much larger risk on that, 7th, 8th round pick. But Cole Hardman being, where he is in drafts, and people he's kind of like the forgotten about receiver at this point, who could explode onto the season this year and have some massive games, and some winnable games. But, then there's also the off chance that Watkins doesn't get cut and that, he ends up being the wide receiver too, and Hardman comes in and only gets 3 targets a game and, 1 catch a game, and it just doesn't work out for him in terms of how successful he can be. But he's just one of those guys that you start and you're not going to get 8 targets, but you hope for that one over the top that Mahomes hits him on a good matchup.
I think that's
a worst case scenario for Hardman.
Right. Exactly.
But he has the potential to be extremely explosive and extremely good. Let's move on to the next guy, Marvin Jones, a little bit higher, in ADP of 91. This has been an interesting guy to talk about because while everyone is out there taking Kenny Golladay off the board at pick 21, you have another guy who finished relatively close to him, same age as Alshon Jeffrey, definitely on the older side, definitely probably on his way out, but he had 62 receptions, 779 yards, 9 touchdowns last year in 13 games. He was second only to Kenny Golladay on the team with still 92 targets. So he was efficient, and he only played 13 games. So it's if he comes in, plays the full season, and he gets 120 targets next year at a 2.11 fantasy point per target, I mean, you're talking about a guy that could definitely finish as a wide receiver 2 next year that you're snagging late in the 9th, 10th round.
Yeah, Marvin Jones is probably my favorite guy on this list.
Okay. He's sneaky, man.
He is. There's times last year where he was better than Kenny Golladay a lot of weeks.
Yeah.
And if you have Matt Stafford play a full year, and if Marvin Jones plays a full year, both guys play a full year, I mean, I think he's going to get probably around 110 to 120 targets.
Yeah.
He had 9 touchdowns last year in 13 games.
I think that'll regress.
Matt Stafford only
14.5% is a little bit concerning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have him regression. I have him with a little regression. I think I have him with 7 touchdowns, playing a full 16.
Yeah.
And I still have him at 175, 180 fantasy points.
Yeah, it'd have to be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So and him going in the 9th round to me, I'm looking at the receivers that are in his area.
Right.
I think he should be higher. He should be much higher.
I agree.
He's going to get targets. He's definitely going to get targets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than Kenny Golladay, there's really nobody else. You could say Danny Amendola. I think Hawkinson's going to get some more targets. They'll probably use Swift and carry on a little bit, but I don't think nobody's going to really affect Marvin Jones's target share, because I think the Lions will also throw the ball almost around 600 times or close to it. So if they do that, they were on pace. If they pretty much just do what they were going to do last year, if they were just on pace of what they're going to do last year, Marvin Jones is going to be a steal in the 9th round.
Oh yeah, highway robbery.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the hardest part for me is it's the same as Cole Hardman. It's the inconsistency. You saw last year there were explosive games for Marvin Jones, and then he would poop the bed, and the explosive game would go to Kenny Golladay, and it would just keep swapping back and forth. And the hard part was predicting when the Marvin Jones thing was going to happen and when he was going to have a big week or he was going to have a bust week, and it didn't really go off matchup. So that's what you're buying into with Marvin Jones. I don't think you're going to have a guy that you can, clearly focus on a week-to-week basis, but he's a guy that you can draft. And after the first couple weeks of the season, if he has a couple explosive games, you could totally deal him and get somebody who's more consistent. But the value you're getting in Marvin Jones at the end of the day is absurd in the 10th round, late 9th. So, I mean, I think you could. I mean, a lot of these wide receivers, man, some of them are like sleepers, but it just the next. Marvin Jones, Alshon Jeffrey, and even the next guy are all like super boring. It seems like last year our sleeper show was like a bunch of young kids, and we're saving all the young kids for the middle rounds. But these late round guys, it's crazy.
It's because most of the younger guys that we really like Terry McLaurin and Debo and like guys like that, they're going like in like the 8th round. So it's not like they're bottom of the draft type of guys.
So let's talk about the last guy, Jamison Crowder. The Jets don't have a wide receiver one. Who did they draft? I forgot his name. Denzel Mims. There it is. So Denzel Mims, he comes in and he's probably going to end up being the wide receiver 2 on that team. Robbie Anderson is gone. He left. He went to, I don't remember.
He went to the Carolina Panthers.
Thank you. And so Jamison Crowder is left there as the wide receiver 1 with Denzel Mims as the wide receiver 2. Now, you can say what you want about Denzel Mims, still a rookie wide receiver, but Crowder coming in at ADP of 135 in the 14th round is a crazy value. I think, for a guy that's projected to be, this is a similar situation to me with David Montgomery in the running back position, right? Monty was burned people last year. He's going later in this year's drafts, a little bit later than he was last year, but he's a guy that's getting to, he's probably going to get 200 plus, opportunities on the ground and, maybe 40 catches through the air. He's got all the opportunity in the world. And that's what I look at when I see Jamison Crowder, is that he might not be the most efficient wide receiver that you have ever seen in your life. And he might not be in the most efficient offense that you've ever seen in your life. But he is going to get you, especially in PPR settings, a lot of targets. And last year he had an average of 7 targets a game, played all 16 games, so he was relatively healthy. If he gets around 9 targets per game, especially without having, Robbie Anderson there and the rookie wide receiver Denzel Mims being in that position, you could see Jamison Crowder definitely perform well. He had a lower fantasy point per target than you would like to see at 1.6 to 1.5. But I think that you're going to see him definitely. There's a real chance that Jamison Crowder could hit 100 receptions this year. And if that's the case in a PPR setting, he is definitely worth the grab later in the draft.
Well, that's the thing with Crowder that I love. He had 122 targets last year.
Yeah.
Darnold missed 3 games. In those 3 games, I should pull up the exact numbers of what he did in those 3 games, but if memory serves me well, Jamison Crowder did not do really anything in those 3 games.
Right.
So he pretty much had 122 targets. He had 122 targets with Sam Darnold missing 3 games. So if Sam Darnold plays the full 16, Crowder plays the full 16, you take out Robbie Anderson, who was Crowder's biggest threat in that offense, and you replace him with a rookie wide receiver, who I like, but is a rookie wide receiver.
Right.
I projected Crowder to have the exact same numbers as he did last year, or targets wise at least.
Yeah.
And I gave Mims a lot of targets. I gave Brashard Perriman, who they signed, a lot of targets. And Crowder still came out to have really good numbers.
Right.
So, and I went easy on it too. So I was like, when I saw that,
you were trying not to be excited.
I was trying not to be excited and still somehow ended up excited. He's also Darnold's security blanket as well. I unfortunately watched a lot of Jets games last year.
Yeah.
But third
by
down
choice.
situations.
Don't make it sound like you didn't do it by choice.
I love Darnold. Okay. I just want to see my boys succeed. But
yeah,
on third down situations and anytime there was a lot of pressure, he would look to Crowder. Crowder was the security blanket.
Yeah,
that's not going to change. It's not like Crowder's an old man either. He's 26, so he's in the prime of his career. Darnold's entering year 3.
Yeah.
If Darnold takes a step this year, If Darnold takes a legitimate step, I mean, James Crowder, if you get him in like the 14th, 15th round, I mean, you could be really in for a...
Like I said earlier, highway robbery.
It is.
Against the rules,
it is highway
but...
robbery.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, he's not efficiency. You know, one of the things I look at, you know, particularly with running backs, but with wide receivers too, is that efficiency. And I'm just going to list off a lot of efficiency statistics right now. And yards per reception, he was the 84th receiver last year. Yards per target, 84th receiver last year. Yards per pass route, 50. Catchable target rate, 78. Target quality rating, 94. Catch rate, 50. Total distance target 43, average distance target 91, cushion 66, target separation 72, drops number 18 in the league, and then drop rate number 54 in the league. So he was not efficient whatsoever. And I think, you know, his target premium too is 60, quarterback rating when targeted 83, number 74 in the league. Target accuracy 80. It's just, he was a gross efficiency player.
But you could make the argument that is because it's the Jets and how bad that offense was last year too. And
they also didn't have Darnold for 5 weeks.
Throw it. Yeah, well, that too. I think that really affected it. And even when Darnold was there, a lot of those plays were probably high pressure situations. So
right.
I think if the Jets kind of are just a little bit better on offense this year, and Darnold too, that's a big thing. If Darnold is a better quarterback, statistically, then I think Crowder is going to get the targets.
Yeah.
And if he gets the targets, he's still, even no matter how gross he is, if he gets the targets, he's going to produce, especially in PPR.
This is probably the grossest sleeper we've ever had in our life.
I love it. Yeah. Absolutely love it.
I think honestly, if you're talking about a half PPR and a PPR, if you're in a standard league, I don't know that I would be all on board with, you know, I mean, in the 14th round, it's okay to go out and get Jamison Crowder, but it's not as good a pickup as it would be.
It's not as big of a sleeper.
It's not as big of a sleeper as it would be in a PPR and a half PPR setting, because if you're getting targeted over 100 times and catching, you know, maybe over 80 balls this year, you know, you're talking about just in PPR a lock of 5 points per game. And then whatever else he adds on top of that in the game gets him to 15, you know, maybe 20 fantasy points a week. So I think especially without Robbie Anderson being there, you're going to see, I mean, they do have Brashad Perryman, and he is a guy that you could have a conversation about coming in and having.
He might be the number 2 guy.
He might be the number 2 guy. But I don't think he's going to take over Crowder as the number 1 guy. So, I mean, you're going to see Crowder be the number 1 guy in this offense, and he's probably going to be the safety blanket, if you will, for Sam Darnold, especially in the slot. So we'll have to see what happens with Crowder, but I think he is definitely a great sleeper to grab in round 14. But there you have it. Our sleepers at the wide receiver position, just 5 of them. There's probably more. You know there is.
From late rounds.
Yeah, late round sleepers. Or you could call those deep sleepers. I don't know that I want to call them that, though. That would be like CeeDee Lambs of the world. Some of them are. Deep sleepers. Some of them are. But anyway, that'll do it for our sleeper show. Don't forget to check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can also head over to our website, thefantasychampions.com, and buy the draft guide. And we will we'll talk to you Thursday, Fantasy Champs.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at @TheFFChamps.